All right, so moving on to a big story. Apple generally unveils new software in the summer, usually in June, and new products in the fall, typically September. So each year we're talking about, it seems, something new, and Dave Hatter is here breaking down what could be the iPhone 7 conveniently on September 7th.
That's probably more than a coincidence, Dan.
So
Probably.
This is going to be old hat, huh?
It looks that way. I mean, you know, everything we're talking about this morning is speculation because Apple really hasn't announced much about this other than they're going to have this big announcement today. But generally they'll roll out hardware products in September or somewhere thereabouts. And the speculation is you're going to see two new models, an iPhone 7 Plus and an iPhone 7. That are not, they're less revolutionary than previous releases and more evolutionary. The theory being that next year on the 10th anniversary, you're going to see a very revolutionary new design from Apple. And this is more of a stopgap thing. Although I can tell you based on what the pundits are putting out there in terms of capabilities, there are some pretty good enhancements that appear to be coming in the new phone.
And those would be what?
Well, for example, the 7 Plus, which would be the bigger guys, 5.5 inches, they're speculating 3 gigs of RAM, which is another gig more than what most iPhones have now. The iPhone 7 Plus and the smaller version would be a 4.7 inch, again, a little less expensive. But with the 7 Plus, one of the things that's really geared towards photography is they're speculating it's going to have a dual lens capability. So instead of having to use digital zoom, you'll have optical zoom like a real camera. So in theory, that would give you much better photography capabilities than the traditional phone and allow it to compete really more in the camera space as opposed to a phone. Plus, the other really big thing in my mind on the Plus side is they're apparently going to increase the storage capability of the phone substantially from like 16 gigs on most iPhones now up to 256 gigs.
Wow.
And when you couple that with the photography capabilities, it will become a much more capable device with the iPhone 7 Plus for someone that's serious about photography and wants to be able to use their phone as opposed to carry around a separate device.
But we're possibly losing the headphone jacks, right?
Yeah, from the pictures that I've seen that have been leaked, it looks like the device itself looks similar. There's some color options, but it looks very similar. The big controversial move is the headphone jack. So you've got the 3.5-inch legacy headphone jack that everyone's familiar with. Rumor is that's going to go away, and headphones now would either have to connect via that proprietary lightning cable or via Bluetooth. Now, this cuts both ways because you could argue that with the extra space they would get by removing that, there's more room for additional capabilities such as larger batteries and so forth inside the device because nowadays millimeters really do make a difference in the capability of these devices. And in theory, it makes the device a lot more water resistant. I'm always hesitant to say waterproof, but think about it. That jack is a big hole in the case. So. That's the plus side. The downside, of course, then is now you have to have proprietary cables or adapters. And, you know, I think it's going to be very interesting if we find out today at the announcement at 10 a.m. Pacific time if that headphone jack is gone, how people are going to respond to that. Because, again, I see that there's definite pros and cons to that.
All right, about 20 seconds left and also some upgrades to the Apple Watch, possibly?
Apparently there's going to be an announcement of a second-generation Apple Watch. Doesn't look like much on the Macintosh front or the tablet front. They usually do those separately. The other thing is these things are not cheap. And I guess in 20 seconds, my advice to folks would be, rather than potentially plunking down anywhere between $800 to $1,000 for one of these guys, usually when a new phone comes out, the price of the existing models, the sixth generation will drop drastically.
Good deal.
You may want to wait and get a much better deal on one of those than potentially plunk down a whole lot of money for a phone that's more of an evolution than a revolution. But I could be wrong. We'll see at 10 a.m. Pacific time, Dan.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank
All right,
you.
Kara.